Sharing the message of Bitcoin gives me more meaning than just making money.
Once you figure out the flaws in the fiat money system, you start seeing flaws in all these other systems, in all these other areas of your life.
I thought money was just a way to exchange value, which it is, but that value does not hold any value if governments can print indefinitely.
Most people are just plugged into this fiat matrix and they don't question it, and they keep putting all this terrible stuff in their bodies. The beauty of Bitcoin is that you start to see where you're losing your life force and you can start to patch it up. Today's guest is someone who's not just talking about Bitcoin, but living it. Paula is the creator of Bitcoin Edge, a podcast where she explores Bitcoin's impact on truth, health, freedom, and spiritual growth. She's a realtor by trade and a firm believer in holistic health. She's also someone who has experienced firsthand the collapse of fiat money while she was living in Zimbabwe. So this isn't just another Bitcoin chat. We're going deep today. Paula, welcome to The Signal.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, I've been following your journey and watching your podcast for months, and you're actually one of the people that inspired me to start this podcast. So thank you for what you're doing in the space.
I love that. We need more voices in the Bitcoin space. And I always say that there's so many different people hear messages differently from others. So I'm so glad you started.
Yeah, thank you again. So let's start with your personal journey. How did Bitcoin first enter your life, and how did it begin to shift the way that you see the world?
I first heard about Bitcoin when I was living in Zimbabwe, actually. I was moved back there to help my mom with my dad, who had Alzheimer's. And while I was there, I went to a talk on Bitcoin. It was more of a multi-level marketing type event, but the message on Bitcoin stuck with me because I knew that inflation was hurting all of us and that our purchasing power was going down. And when I heard this message on Bitcoin, it made sense to me. But of course, at first, I just wanted to make money. So I got into this multi-level marketing scheme and I was never able to get my money back. And at the same time, I bought not GBTC at the time. And that went up like crazy and then crashed like crazy. And I'm like, this is not for me. I'm out of here. I lost my money in this area and I lost my money in that area. And it wasn't until 2020 when COVID hit that I heard about Bitcoin again. And I had time. We all had time. And I've heard many people say during COVID was when they rediscovered Bitcoin, and that was true for me. So when I heard about it again, my second or third touch point, it made sense. And I thought, I need to get back in here and then start studying. And that's how it started for me.
Yeah, and one of the things that really draws me to your channel is that you often focus on the spiritual side of Bitcoin. And you've said that you just love talking about the spiritual side of Bitcoin. And that's what I love talking about as well. That's what I want the focus of this channel to be about. So what does that mean to you?
So when I was finding Bitcoin again, let me go back. When I left Zimbabwe and came back to the US, I went through sort of a crisis and I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. I didn't want to go back to my old life. And I missed my family who were living in Zimbabwe, but I also realized that there wasn't a big future for me there. So when I came back to Miami, I went into kind of like a depression and I started looking more for my purpose. And that took me on a journey to first Bob Proctor. And I started learning about manifesting and that our thoughts create our reality. And what I put out, I get back. And that really resonated with me because I started to see, as I started each day in gratitude, I started to feel better, even though at first I was not very grateful. It took some practice, but I did realize I had quite a lot going for me, and I was very lucky compared to what many people go through. I see what people go through in Zimbabwe, and I wasn't going through that, and yet I was a lot more unhappy than many of them. So when I saw that, I realized that I needed to find purpose in my life, and I started looking. I didn't know, but I went on this journey, and that took me to meditation and quiet time and really get to know myself, like myself as I was, rather than who I wanted to be. And then that was the start of my spiritual journey in that way. Again, I have to say, when I was 17, I moved to the US to play on a tennis scholarship at the University of Miami. And even at that age, I was searching for on
Mhm.
spirituality and looking for deeper meaning. And it took me another 20 years to
Mhm.
really have a crisis and look again. And what I came to is that whatever I do in life, I need to have some meaning. Otherwise, it just all seems pointless. And I was in real estate, like you mentioned. And yes, I was making more money and enjoying some of my clients, but I didn't really feel like it was my purpose and my passion. And I found Bitcoin. As I saved my time and energy in Bitcoin, I realized that time is our most valuable resource and that, as Matt Manning says, as I had the time to look within, I could look for more meaning. And Bitcoin and sharing the message of Bitcoin gives me more meaning than just making money in the fiat world. Yes, there's a place for that. I'm not completely on the Bitcoin standard yet, and I do like a lot of my real estate, but I no longer do things that I really dislike. And I don't work with clients who don't appreciate my time. I at least can have the choice on that, and that's thanks to Bitcoin.
Yeah, I really love hearing your story, and I can relate to what you're talking about in terms of how you found Bob Proctor, because before Bitcoin, I was also really searching for deeper meaning as well, really my whole life. And I would look for it in things like self-help and personal transformation books and seminars like Tony Robbins. And recently I've been getting into Joe Dispenza, and Wayne Dyer is actually one of my favorites. But although I've gotten a lot out of reading works from these people and going to their seminars, when I discovered Bitcoin, it was just on a whole nother level. It was basically, I found what I was trying to find in these other things. I just found that when I aligned with Bitcoin, all of the things just happened automatically. It was pretty magical how that happened. And when you're looking into these other things like Bob Proctor or Tony Robbins, you can read some stuff and get some nice insight and nice information, but I find that it often fades over time and it's hard to integrate into your life. Whereas when you align with Bitcoin, it's so easy to integrate into your life because you just become Bitcoin. And as when you become in tune with Bitcoin, it just naturally manifests throughout all aspects of your life. And it sounds like that's what happened with you in terms of it changed your purpose and your direction. Are there other parts of your life or your outlook that changed once you discovered Bitcoin?
That's a great question. I'm going to come back to that. I just would like to say I think you're right about the personal development space.
Yeah.
Yes, it works, but it's based in the fiat world, right? And I've heard other people say this too, that it works. And yes, if you want more money and more things, the law of attraction and Tony Robbins and many of these wonderful people does work if you put in the time and the work, proof of work. Also, the main goal is in the fiat world. And Bitcoin now Bitcoin, as Jeff Booth says, is a whole nother protocol. So not only are we switching over to another protocol where in this world, everybody has a more even chance. And in this world, we don't print money, we don't print extra Bitcoin. It's a much more fairly distributed world bounded by energy. And so I can still use what I learn in those personal development in the Bitcoin world, but I also care about the rest of the world more in this world too. It's not just about me. And yeah, I agree. There's just a slight shift. And it's something about fix the money, fix the world. I know that it doesn't fix everything, but it fixes a lot. Having sound money fixes a lot. And I hear a lot about, to your question, a lot of people, it changes their health, it changes their minds on things. For me, my health was already there. I was already in holistic health. So I wasn't following the Fiat world on health, where our food is being degraded because, like in Joe Bryan's video, I spoke to him yesterday, so I'm thinking about it. He explains that companies have to either re bring down their quality of their food or they have to sell less because with inflation and prices going up, they always have to find a way to be profitable. So either the quality of the food comes down, or they sell you less, or there are other methods of making money. So that's why our food quality is going down. And I always knew that. I didn't so much know why, but I knew the quality of our food was going down. So I've always bought organic and always say I spend all my money there. It has helped my health. My health has been wonderful because of that, I believe. It's not just food, it's also the air we breathe, the quality of our thoughts, also how much we sleep. And the other thing, the quality of water is really important. And the quality even of our clothes, some people say, but that is a lesser degree of what we put in our body and how much we sleep and how much we stress. So managing all of those things, I worked on that first before I found Bitcoin. But so health was great, but without purpose, meaning, and happiness, I hadn't found all the pieces to the puzzle.
Yeah, what you're describing is what I've been feeling a lot lately too, is how Bitcoin is not the end of the awakening. It's really the beginning of alignment. So a lot of times I think people get really excited that they get this Bitcoin awakening, but I think it's important that Bitcoiners don't stop there. It's often the spark that ignites this bigger transformation. And it's really just the tip of the iceberg. Once you figure out the flaws in the fiat money system, you start seeing flaws in all these other systems, in all these other areas of your life. And so Bitcoin really, the beauty of Bitcoin is how it serves as the spark for you to then align all these other areas of your life. And for me, working as a doctor, it blew my mind how I had the wrong idea about medicine and traditional healthcare. And once I saw things from a Bitcoin lens, it really changed the way I saw everything, really. And I saw what you're referring to about all the motives and the misaligned incentives and how the pharmaceutical industry is all about profit and not about your health. And what you're describing about the importance of health is very true because health is wealth. So you cannot neglect your health and be wealthy. It's a huge part of living a wealthy life is having your health. And I think people often downplay that. And a lot of it is because of this fiat society that we live in, where money is everything, where people are willing to sacrifice their health in order to get more fiat dollars. But when you have the Bitcoin mindset, you realize how that just makes no sense at all. And that's one thing that I really liked about your channel is you often talk about your passion about holistic health. And I think that ties in so well with the ethos of Bitcoin. And you mentioned some of your ideas about holistic health, but can you talk a little bit about your background and how you got into holistic health and how you think these ideas related to holistic health relate to Bitcoin?
Yeah, so I started out once I graduated from college. I did my master's, but I have always been a very outdoor person, so I could not see myself in an office, and I could never be a doctor because I faint when I see blood. But wonderful profession and very much needed. But so I went into personal training, and even with a master's degree, I'm like, I'm doing personal training. And I started going to these events in Miami. Every year we'd have to get recertified and do our continuing education. And there was this guy who was at the events. His name's Paul Chek, and he is one of the top holistic health practitioners in the world. And he would tell the truth about the food and about certain medicines and how much they were hurting people, and about even exercise equipment. And all the sponsors hated him because he was saying the protein bars are shit and the exercise equipment is hurting the joints. And when you hear the truth, you know it. And I heard the truth. And so I just followed him. And even though I kept personal training, I started focusing more on corrective exercise because I realized you can also mess up your body if you overtrain certain muscles and get out of alignment. But he talked a lot about the food and the health. And I realized that what else is really important in health is how much energy you have all day, how good your digestion is. Your body doesn't lie. People lie, bodies don't lie. Your body's always giving you messages. So I started focusing more on that because I realized this was important. I've been studying that ever since. So that's at least 30 years. And I just eventually got tired of trying to convince other people to do it because there's so much mixed messages out there about health and fitness, and everybody gets there in their own time, just like Bitcoin. But I continue doing it myself, but most people just want to lose weight. That's the first step. But it's like Bitcoin, to go from losing weight to eating organic, they don't see the connection. You get all of those chemicals out of your body, it's a good start. And if you're young, you can get away with things for a long time. But by the time you get older and all this has built up, it takes much longer to unwind. Just like the fiat mindset takes longer to unravel once you've been entrenched in it for a long time.
Yeah, you often talk about the concept of self-sovereignty on your channel. And I think what you're talking about in terms of taking charge of your health is ties in so well with that, just having self-sovereignty over your health. Because part of my Bitcoin awakening was just realizing how much I was outsourcing all of my life to all these other outside institutions and things outside of me. And when I discovered Bitcoin, it was really the first time I had ever felt that idea and that feeling of sovereignty, of actually, I'm in control and I'm not dependent on a company or an institution. And so I first felt that financial sovereignty in terms of I'm actually owning my life force, and I'm not outsourcing it to a bank or to a company or to stocks or to real estate. I'm actually owning it. And it was such a powerful feeling. And I think that same feeling is what you get from health when you take back your health and you don't put the stuff in your body that these corporations are marketing and telling you is healthy when really it's just terrible and actually carcinogenic a lot of times. And it's this theme that runs throughout a lot of different areas of life in terms of sovereignty. And so I really, you have that background in holistic health, and you talk about it being the truth, because once you see the truth, you feel it. It's this frequency. And that's also what happens with Bitcoin too, because Bitcoin radiates at this frequency of truth. And when you touch it and when you hold it, you get in line with that frequency of truth. And it sounds like that's what happened when you learned about holistic health, is you just felt that you were aligning with truth. And so in terms of holistic health, what are some things that you feel like are aligned with truth? Some of like the main concepts or principles that is that probably often runs counter to the mainstream narrative. But once you see it, to you, it's incontrovertible truth. So what are some of those main things that you think would be important for people to look into, or if they're curious, to at least expose their minds to these ideas?
I'd say one of them is one size doesn't fit. What works for one person doesn't work for another. So it is about finding what works for you. We all are from different ancestry, different race, different places in the world. And that actually does have an effect, because if you look at Weston A. Price's work, he studied populations all over the world. He found that Eskimos do best on 90% protein and fat. They don't get cancer and heart disease eating 90% fat. And then the people at the equator did best on mostly vegetarian and much lighter meals. And the same thing with them. There are very few native populations left in the world, unfortunately, because we've been westernized or modernized. But when he did study the native people, and he proved this, and he showed their teeth were great, their face structure was good. And he proved that as our health deteriorates, eyes become closer together, teeth get worse, and there are many things that deteriorate over generations. So it's not just about finding the one size fits all, or that the size 4 is the best size, or it's your bone structure, it's your body, your ancestry. There are a lot of different factors, and not one book has all the answers either. But it's like you mentioned, self-sovereignty. What works for me? I tried many different ways of eating before I found what works for me. And like I mentioned, what works is, do I have energy all day? Am I sleeping well? For me, I do pretty well on 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I know other people do well on less. And it's just about finding what works for you. But there are some guidelines, and eating real food is one of them. So, sure, you can eat a lot more protein and fat, but is it real? And is it conventional food? Because if it's conventional food, learn what they're putting in that conventional cow. Unfortunately, they're full of antibiotics because the cows get sick because they're not fed grass anymore. And they are not walking around in free range. This is not natural. So, yeah, Bitcoiners go big into the eating meat, and I'm sure they feel great on it, but it does need to be a healthy meat. And yes, it's more expensive. Why? Because it's much harder to produce. Even our farming has gone very commercialized, and the quickest way to produce is give them hormones so they grow quickly and get them to slaughter as quick as possible so we can make more money. That is not the best quality for us. So it's about finding the right balance for you, whether it's vegetables, meat, and fats, but high quality food.
Yeah, yeah, that's huge. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it's what fascinates me is how easy it is to look into this stuff and realize how wrong the mainstream narrative is, but how hard it is to get people to see it. Because the fiat illusion just runs so deep that if you bring up stuff like this, you're often, they put you in the category of a conspiracy theorist, or those things aren't relevant. And it's crazy how deep the fiat illusion runs. And luckily, Bitcoin has showed people the fiat illusion in terms of money. And then once you see that, you see just how easy it is to peel that back just a little bit, and how easy it is to verify just how much corruption there is, and how misaligned all the incentives are, and how destructive that is on the regular individual. And when you see that, you start thinking, where else is that happening in our life? And what you described with the food is huge. And where most people are just plugged into this fiat matrix and they don't question it, and they keep putting all this terrible stuff in their bodies. And it's the same concept as Bitcoin, where a melting ice cube when we're storing our money and stuff that's not Bitcoin. It's just everything's basically a melting ice cube, and we're losing our life force. So we're losing our life force in terms of money. We're losing our life force in terms of health. So if you look at all these inputs and all these different categories, you realize that we're just losing our life force just in all these different places. And the beauty of Bitcoin is that you start to see where you're losing your life force and you can start to patch it up. So all it takes is for you to have this realization and you can move your money out of the fiat system into the Bitcoin system, and then you're protected. And what you're saying about the food, all it takes is for you to have some awareness about what's in your food, and then you can protect yourself by getting food that is actually healthy for you. And so that's a big reason why I wanted to start a YouTube channel and just share what I've learned, because it starts with awareness. And if you don't have the awareness, you're just going to keep falling into that same trap, and your life is just going to not be as good as it can be. That's one of the amazing things about Bitcoin, is it pulls you up, and it makes your life better in all these different aspects. And I know that you feel that too. And you've talked about how you've been wanting to go all in on your Bitcoin path, because once you feel what it's like to align with Bitcoin, it shows you the contrast of what it feels like to be in the fiat world. And it's like night and day. And I know that you've talked about how you still have your fiat job. And as time goes on, it's getting harder and harder for you to stay in that fiat job. So can you talk about what the struggle that you're going through in terms of wanting to move fully into the Bitcoin world, but not feeling quite ready to do that yet?
Yeah. And when you're talking, it just gives me for compassion for people who are coming into the Bitcoin space. And I think you're right. Awareness is the very first step. And because we can talk about self-sovereignty and all of that, but if you don't see the problem, then it's very hard to find the solution, whether it's food or whether it's Bitcoin. Because with the food, if you are sick and not energetic and you don't realize it's because of the food
Mm-hmm.
or whatever it is because of, then you're not going to find the solution because you think that you're eating healthy because, yeah, you're eating greens and whatever, but it might not be healthy and it might not be working for you. And the same with Bitcoin. I love self-sovereignty too. I just wanted to comment on that. I love the idea of taking self-sovereignty myself, but I know a lot of people are afraid of that. That's why we see a lot of people go into the ETFs, and that's a whole nother subject we'll get to. But I like the self-sovereignty because I like the idea of being responsible. When I was going through that depression stage, I was obviously feeling sorry for myself. And the very first thing, well, in Jack Canfield's book, is take responsibility for everything in life. I've read all the books. And it makes sense. Take responsibility. Then who am I going to blame? If I have a choice where I want to be, I am the one. I just have to find the way. And most of those answers, as we know, are within. So I had to go within. And that's a never-ending journey for me. But back to your question. Tell me again the question.
The question was about how you've recently spoken about how you really want to go all in on your Bitcoin podcast, and it's hard for you to stay in your fiat job as a realtor. But the allure of fiat and getting that paycheck is hard to just take that big leap and just go into the unknown. And I know you've been vocal about your struggle and how you're in this middle ground phase. And can you just talk about what you're feeling and what it's like to straddle both worlds right now? Because I think this is really important for people to hear about how people are navigating this struggle. Because I think a lot of Bitcoiners and a lot of people who get into Bitcoin in the future are going to feel the same struggle in terms of being pulled between the Bitcoin world and the fiat world.
Yeah, I think I was avoiding the question. It's a great question.
Yeah.
It is a great question. And I think we spoke about it on Spaces. I'm very much black and white. So I
Mhm.
want to cut off the one and go into the other, but it doesn't realistically work that way. I was just talking to somebody now and I said, they were asking me, when are you going to sell your Bitcoin? And I said, I'm not selling my Bitcoin. Oh, but you can work so hard and then you're not going to sell your Bitcoin. I said, it's not that. And I don't agree with that statement. Never sell your Bitcoin. I do agree that we spend and replace. But what you and I are talking about is my goal is to move from the fiat system, which is imploding on itself, to the Bitcoin standard, which is an open, honest, decentralized, trustless system that I see a much better world in that place. And so instead of being so hard on myself that I got to do it right now, I am moving more and more of my time into the Bitcoin world, more and more of my time and energy, my money also. Yes, I've heard this argument from many. We have retirement, and in those, we don't, there is a way to have self-sovereign retirement accounts. What's the word for it? But I'm not quite that deep in it yet. So I do have some MicroStrategy and the ETFs. But my goal is with everything else outside the retirement accounts is to get as much into self-sovereign Bitcoin as possible because I see them as two separate systems. And I want to move my time and energy and my money into that. And I will just say the struggle is a little bit what if? What if this doesn't end up being the way forward? Or if some big AI or quantum comes in and things change? Because many people say to me in my life, you need to be diversified. Our favorite word, diversified. And I struggle a little bit with that. So I am moving slowly over to the Bitcoin world because even if this fails, the Bitcoin world is a better world. I see it. My life has got better, not just because, yes, it's gone up in value. My money now holds value, but also because there's such wonderful people in the space and they're generous. I just got sent a great book by a Bitcoiner, Daniel White, and another comic book I bought from another guest. And this Satoshi that I have that reminds me to be humble and stack sats. And the Bitcoiners are just fabulous, not perfect. There are some people who are still on their journey. And yeah, but in general, I would say that Bitcoiners are curious, willing to grow, willing to go deeper. And I want to be in that world more than the other world.
Yeah, that's very well said. Because the root of this question is if you look at someone like Jeff Booth, so he believes so strongly in that Bitcoin world, and he puts his money where his mouth is, and he puts his energy where his mouth is. So he doesn't even go to places where there's not Bitcoiners. So he essentially only has his Noster. He doesn't have an X, I believe.
Yeah.
He only puts his time in Noster, and we need people like that because that we need people to inspire us to move out of this fiat system because we're so ingrained in this fiat system that it is hard to move over because there's just so much momentum keeping us in the fiat system. But when we have people like Jeff Booth inspiring us, it's very important to have leaders like that. But for most people, it's not going to be practical for us to move all of our energy out, at least for this transition period, because there are the practical aspects of how are you going to pay for your rent and how are you going to make money. So I think it's important to not beat ourselves up too much if we find ourselves in that situation and we can't do what Jeff Booth did and we still have to keep one foot in the fiat system, which is my situation. I'm still working as a doctor in the hospital, but I cut down my shifts a lot because I don't like the idea of putting all my extra energy into this fiat system. So any extra shifts I would have been working in the hospital, I now devote towards making these videos and trying to educate about Bitcoin and put this message out there. So I think it's important for people to hear that you don't have to beat yourself up too much if you still have to stay in the fiat system. There is a role for us to be these intermediaries and help people in their transition. And we can all help each other as we all transition out of this fiat world, because we all can see how incredible it's going to be once we're out of this fiat world and everyone's in a Bitcoin world. But it's just very hard to know how long that's going to take. So in the meantime, we just have to be present here in the fiat world and bring that Bitcoin ethos into the fiat world and slowly be the change that we want to see.
And I think you bring up a good point, and you make me think people who are loving what they do in the fiat
Mm-hmm.
world and then buying Bitcoin, that's great. I
Mm-hmm.
think, I don't know, you might love being a doctor or certain aspects of it. And that for me is important. My time is now more valuable. And I learned that because of Bitcoin. Why did I have to learn that from Bitcoin? We should all know
Mm-hmm.
our time is valuable. You hear
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
hear people say, oh yeah, life is short, but
Mm-hmm.
people aren't living it because people are doing what they don't enjoy and doing jobs until they're 65 and they didn't even like the job. And now it's getting later and later. People are working longer and longer. So my goal is by the end of the year to mostly be out of real estate. And I'm not sure exactly if I'm financially ready for it, but I am going to take a bit of a leap of faith, not entirely yet, but almost, possibly entirely. We'll see how it goes at the end of the year.
That's a very exciting step that you're going to take. I can't wait to watch your journey
Yeah,
because,
I know you'll be close behind me, but
yeah,
do you enjoy being a doctor? Is that something you'll continue?
I've always enjoyed being a doctor. It's just, but I've questioned it a lot lately after having this Bitcoin awakening, because it's something I've always enjoyed, but it's also something I haven't questioned very much. I've just always gone down this path, and my I've always been a good student, and I always wanted to make my parents proud, so I just followed down this path that the fiat system had laid out for me. It's been good. I feel like I've been able to help people and make a difference. But now that I've had my eyes opened in terms of how the incentives are so misaligned in healthcare, it feels like I'm not helping in the way that I really thought I was helping. So it's made me a little bit more disillusioned. And getting back to the holistic health mindset, where as a doctor trained in traditional Western medicine, I've just been so indoctrinated to think that every condition needs a pill. And I've just realized that's just not true. And when my whole life force is centered around this idea that everyone needs a pill, and I realize that that's not the truth, I feel like I'm just not living in full alignment. And that's what Bitcoin does, is it shows you the truth. And when you hold Bitcoin, you feel the truth as well. So it makes it easy for you to, when you're going through your life, to feel when things are not true. And when things don't feel true, then you feel out of alignment. And so I feel a little bit out of alignment. And so that's why I have the same feelings that you have about wanting to just jump out of the system and get onto the Bitcoin boat. But I've come to terms with it and realized that there is a role for people like me who don't go fully over into the Bitcoin world to stay in the fiat world and inject that Bitcoin ethos into the fiat world. And so that's how I've come to peace with it. And it's actually made my job even more fulfilling, because I know that I have to abide by these fiat rules and protocols, which can be frustrating. But I also know that I can bring this Bitcoin ethos in to the fiat job and make a difference that way. And maybe hopefully inspire people to think about Bitcoin, even if I don't mention Bitcoin specifically. If I just can inspire them to think in a way that is aligned with Bitcoin principles, that's a win, I feel like.
Yeah, and we all need doctors, right?
Yeah.
Especially emergency rooms. We especially
Mm-hmm.
because accidents happen
Mm-hmm.
and painkillers. No, I'm just kidding. But no, because I don't like pain. But I myself, I don't take medicine. However, if I was in pain, I would. And I definitely need doctors. I just think that, like you mentioned, the medical system doesn't look at the whole picture. Like you
Mm-hmm.
said, pill for everything. And if we could integrate more with the body's ability to heal, and then it might be a little bit better. But I love that you're bringing Bitcoin to people. And I think you're right. We need people in both sides because we need to bring more Bitcoiners over.
Yeah. And eventually, in a Bitcoin world, we'll take all of those truths that you talked about with holistic health, and we will incorporate that into medicine. And that's one of the ways that Bitcoin fixes the world. When you fix the money, you fix things like this, because things just will have to be more aligned with truth. And you can't just have this system where it's based on things that just aren't true. The fiat, the Bitcoin just exposes all of that, and it's going to get fixed, but it might take a while. But it's nice that we have this vision and we can slowly work towards that.
Exactly.
But shifting gears a little bit, I know something that's very interesting about your story is about how you lived in Zimbabwe, which is one of the most extreme examples of the fiat system collapsing. So, what did you learn from that, both practically and spiritually?
So in 2008, I remember my dad coming home with suitcases of luggage and counting all the money from some business deal, only to run back out the door and go spend it right away because at that time, Zimbabwe was one of the highest inflation in the world. And that's why we have that $1 trillion note floating around out there. And what did I learn? At the time, nothing. I just thought the government's corrupt. And I wasn't even sure if I knew why the money was devaluing. I just thought nobody wants money from Zimbabwe. But really, what was happening, they were printing too much money. But how do you print that much to get to, I don't even know what the inflation was. It was so high. So yeah, I saw that happening. And everybody over there, my mother, she had saved her entire life a pension from being a teacher. That just went to zero overnight, and everybody else too. So people lost a lot. And you would think that more people there would get Bitcoin, and maybe they will. I do know that in Africa, Bitcoin is being used more as a medium of exchange because the further away you are from the money printer, and the countries in the global south, in South America and Africa in particular, their currencies are devaluing quicker than anybody else. So they really need it. But unfortunately, in Zimbabwe, they also now use the US dollar. So people, instead of going from the Zimbabwe dollar, they all just try to work for the US dollar. The US dollar is still the best currency in the world. And yet, you and I both know the US dollar is continuing to also be manipulated and printed as we speak. And so in Zimbabwe, it just taught me that something wasn't right. I had not studied the history of money. I had not studied even what money was. I thought money was just a way to exchange value, which it is, but that value does not hold any value if governments can print indefinitely. I've had a big learning lesson. How did it affect me spiritually? I think it just gave me compassion for the people there because I felt that because I left, I was able to see other places and see how other places worked and learn quicker than if you just stay there. It's like being in a fishbowl almost. Everybody just trying to make more US dollars. And it's a bit of a rat race too. So I do have compassion for the people there. It's one reason I started my channel. I wanted people all over the world to know that Bitcoin is there and anybody can opt in at any time. But even when I tried to speak to people there who need Bitcoin, they weren't ready. So it's the same thing. Forcing people doesn't work. Telling them they need it, if they don't see it, they don't need it. So I started the channel because then I felt that people who need it or are ready will find me.
Yeah, it's very interesting what you say about how even people who are living through it, who had all the reason to be able to have the motivation to figure out what's going on behind the money system and how corrupt the fiat system is, they still didn't see it. It just shows how deep this fiat illusion is. And so here in the US, most people don't have any reason to question it. And if hearing your story, even in countries where people do have reason to question it, they still don't question it. It's really crazy how deep this fiat illusion goes. And that's why it's so important for people like you and other people who have been given this gift to see through it, to start to help other people see through it too. Because it's something that we don't have any motivation. We don't personally gain from other people waking up. It's just, we just know that if you don't wake up to it, it's going to just slowly be this drain on your life. And if you do wake up to it, you can patch that drain and slowly start to actually build up your life and live a life of your own design, as opposed to just being at the whims of all these policies and things that really just drain you.
Yeah. I just one other thing about people there. A lot of people live week to week and
Mm,
month to month. I've heard Preston Pish say that Bitcoin is for net producers. You really have to
yeah.
have a little bit extra to save in Bitcoin. So it gave me a lot of compassion for people there and all around the world. But that's the next step. And that could be part of somebody's journey. But you've got to find a way to create a little bit extra and spend less than you make.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's a huge problem is most people are living paycheck to paycheck. And if you are living paycheck to paycheck, then yeah, you don't have any reason to question it because you don't have any excess. So it doesn't really make a difference. So yeah, that's a great point. And that just highlights how broken our system is. Why are there so many people that are just living paycheck to paycheck and don't have any extra saving? So yeah, there's just the fiat world is just so broken, and that's why us Bitcoiners, we really just we want to just move on to a different system so that people can not be living paycheck to paycheck. Because when you're living paycheck to paycheck, not only do you not have any reason to look into the fiat system, but you can't actually ascend to these higher levels of like self-actualization. It gets back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where people are just so focused on survival and safety and food. It's impossible for them to start thinking about how are they going to become a better person, or how are they going to fulfill their soul's desires or self-actualize. And if people are all stuck down here, how are we going to expect society to ever get to the next level? Because society is really just the collective consciousness. So if everyone is down here, we can't expect society to get better if we don't help empower people and allow them to elevate and rise on Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Somebody said on my show the other day that 70% of Americans don't have $1,000 in savings. I think that sounds a bit high to me. I've heard over 50%, but that's incredible because things happen. We all need that extra, and I'm sure they come up with it. We live on credit. I know we can always get credit here, but part of the reason I've heard, and Seb Bunny describes this really well, is that when people don't have any hope that they can buy a home or get ahead, they tend not to think to the future and just say, screw it, I'm gonna just spend now and not even worry about it because I can never really buy a house. They're too expensive right now for the average worker. I don't know if that's the case for everybody or if we've just got so much into this lifestyle of keeping up with the Joneses, which I did get into. I did, and not in a bragging type way, but yeah, I want a nice car and I want a nice clothing to keep up and fit in with the group. But Bitcoin has taught me that low time preference, deep down, I know what matters. What matters is the people in my life, the experiences I have, enjoying my time and finding meaning. Yes, it's nothing wrong with having some of those things. I'm definitely no saint, but I do think twice about it now, but how I spend because I see the world's out of control with that.
Yeah, that's a very common thing with Bitcoiners is that we realize how much we were way too focused on material objects and we get just caught in that trap of materialism. But Bitcoin opens your eyes and makes you realize, why did I want all that stuff? And when you take your focus off of the material objects, you have more space in your energy system and your soul to really think about your purpose and about what really makes you happy, and not just blindly going down this fiat track of just wanting to accumulate stuff and get material objects. But do you have time for a lightning round?
Of course,
Okay. So what's one truth about Bitcoin that you think most people still don't understand?
that it's a protocol based on energy.
Yeah, that's such a deep concept. I think it was Henry Ford who talked about having this vision of needing an energy currency. And yeah, the idea of energy currency is just incredible how you tie in the natural world into the monetary system, and it's such a it's such a beautiful concept when you think about it like that. And what's one thing that you do daily that protects your energy or your sovereignty?
Meditate, spend time
Nice.
in silence. Yeah.
Yeah, I need to get better about meditating more regularly. How long do you meditate for?
I do about 15 minutes. I would like to do longer, but I do it first thing in the morning to put that first. Otherwise, I want to check the Bitcoin price,
Yeah.
check the latest podcast, but I want to put myself first and my connection with something bigger than me first before I go and try to tackle the day.
So before you even look at your phone, you immediately go into meditation?
No.
Okay.
I do look at my phone,
Yeah.
but I try not to respond to family or
Hmm.
anything unless it was emergency. But yeah, I do look at the phone, then I just put my meditation app on and go from there.
Yeah. What app do you use?
Good question. I'm not
Does it
sure
have guided meditations or
it
music?
does, but
Yeah.
I find that silence is good for
Hmm.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise, and I do different meditations. I've definitely done Tony Robbins priming meditation, which is great. You want to
Mm-hmm.
feel good?
Yeah.
It is good and it gets your mind. But I sometimes just need the time to focus on breathing as well. So I
It's
do.
crazy how simple it is, huh? Just taking time to just focus on your breath and just have stillness, how much difference that makes in your day.
Yeah.
Because whenever I've had periods of time where I've meditated more regularly, it's a palpable difference in your life. But for some reason, it's so easy to just fall off. So thank you for inspiring me. I'm gonna get back on it.
Great.
If you could orange pill your past self, what would you say?
Oh, good one. I would say keep an open mind, and it's not just about getting rich.
Great, great. Anything else that you wanted to add?
No, this was great. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I'm looking forward to having you on my channel.
Yeah, I can't wait to come on your channel.
I'll be
Uh,
ready.
can you let the viewers know where they can find you?
So I'm on YouTube at the Bitcoin Edge with Paula, and I'm also on X, I think at the Bitcoin Edge, and I'm also on Nostr, and I'm also working on moving over more and more to Nostr, just because, as Jeff Booth says, X is a wonderful place to meet Bitcoiners, but it also is centralized. And like everything else, I'm moving more to decentralized world.
Yeah, that's very inspirational. Thank you for all of the knowledge that you dropped today, and thank you for everything that you're doing in the Bitcoin space. Can't wait to talk to you soon.
Thank you. It was great to be here.
All right, take care. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of The Signal. In a world drowning in noise, signal is everything. Most people are overwhelmed, distracted, and deceived, not because they lack intelligence, but because they've lost the ability to discern what truly matters. But signal cuts through the noise, and Bitcoin Bitcoin is pure signal. It doesn't promise. It doesn't lie. It doesn't bend to opinion or propaganda. It just is. And as the world descends into even more chaos, distraction, and distortion, your ability to identify signal, to recognize what's real, true, and timeless will be one of your greatest assets. So stay sharp, stay sovereign, stay tuned, because here on the signal, we don't follow trends, we follow truth. I'm Dr. Satoshi, and in a world of noise, we are the signal.